Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Catch Your Breath podcast. If you are a homeschool mom who wants to breathe easier, live freely, and homeschool with more peace, confidence, and joy, you are absolutely in the right place. Hi, I'm Inga Masick, and I am a homeschool coach. I am your cheerleader, your encourager, and I want you to know right up front that my role here is not to tell you what to do because there are no shoulds here. This is a space to help you to see clearly, to name what's actually going on, and to choose the next steps that fit your real life. Because everything that we talk about here comes from real life, real conversations, and my deep belief that God meets us in the middle of real life, not our perfect plans. So if this is your first time, I just want to say thank you for showing up, for giving me a little bit of your listening space. And if you're back again, what's up, friend? I am really glad that you're here. Now, if you've been listening for any amount of time, then you know that we always start by checking in. So let me ask you, how are you doing today? How are you doing right now? Wherever you are, I'd love for you to just take a moment to catch your breath. So let's catch our breath together. Breathe in through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out through your mouth, 2, 3, 4. And let's do that one more time. Breathe in through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. And breathe out through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. Well, today I want to talk to you about discipline, but not in the way that it's usually talked about, because I don't want to talk about discipline as willpower, which is where I've been often. And I don't want to talk about it as trying hard. And not discipline as something that you either have or you don't. Instead, I want to talk about discipline as support. Because for me, one of the biggest shifts was realizing that I wasn't actually lacking discipline. I just didn't understand the different kinds of discipline that homeschooling actually requires. And really, this came out of my real life, thinking about the things that I wanted to get better at and recognizing that I had given myself this label that I was undisciplined and hadn't given myself any credit for all the areas in my life where I had discipline. So as I think about homeschooling, the truth is it takes discipline to start homeschooling. Because if you started, you know that you need discipline and you already have that discipline. But what I didn't realize for a long time is that sometimes the discipline that it takes to start homeschooling is not the same discipline that it's going to take to keep going. And it's not the same discipline that's actually even needed in every single season of homeschooling. And when I believed that story, that I wasn't a disciplined person, I felt very discouraged and it felt abstract because I didn't know how to get from where I was to where I needed to go. But then as I started to study more and look into this more, I recognized that when I started to recognize these specific disciplines that were missing, everything else changed because I was able to give myself permission to say, it's not that I don't have discipline. It's that I need a specific type of discipline in this state, in this season, in where I am. And then I could work towards that. And that's what I want to walk through with you today. As we think about discipline number one of the most important things is the discipline to begin, because this one matters more than we often realize. Starting anything can feel daunting. And when it comes to something as big as homeschooling, sometimes we often think that we need to have everything figured out before we begin. But if you've started anything in your life, you already know that that's not usually how it works. And I read a book once, I can't think of his name. I told you guys, it comes to me right then, so I don't think about it ahead of time, but I'll put it in the show notes, where he talks about the power of starting. And I love that he really helped us to see that starting does require discipline. And it's not necessarily that we're going to feel 100% ready, but it's going to be that we've decided to begin anyway, in spite of not feeling ready. And here's something that I want you to notice and to give yourself some credit for, because it's going to help you to move to the next thing. If you've started homeschooling, you already exercised this discipline. You disciplined yourself to begin. And maybe you did have a very clear plan of what you wanted to do, and maybe you didn't. but you made a decision and you started. And that same discipline is still available for us now, even though we're in it because of what we just talked about. If you're in the middle of homeschooling and you're thinking about making a change, whether it's that you want to start something new, whether you want to stop something that's not working, or you want to tweak something that you're already doing, you need this discipline. And it's that same discipline that you use to start. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to start it in the exact same way. And it doesn't mean that it's going to look like everybody else, because starting doesn't look the same for everyone. And that's what's so beautiful about the way that God has made us. Some of us need time to research and think things through quietly by ourselves. That's me. Like, I got to spend a lot of time writing it down, looking at it, figuring it out, just thinking through, getting all my research. But then there are other people that need to talk it out with people, and they need to hear other people's experiences, and they need to have a conversation where they're bouncing it off of someone. And the truth is, there's no right way to start. There's just your way. So here's the simple anchor for this one. Just begin. Not perfectly, not with everything figured out, just with intention that this is what we need. And however you feel like you need to begin, if you're using this time before you go back to school or before you start back homeschooling to write everything down, to look over things, to all of that, whatever that is, know that that's a discipline and then begin. And here's the question that we can ask ourselves when we're thinking about this. What's one thing that needs a start again? And what does starting again look like for you? And even though I say again, if it's something that you've not done, but it's a brand new thing that you're like, we really need to put this into our homeschool, just ask yourself, how do I begin things? What do I need in order to begin? Give yourself permission to ask the question, answer the question, and then move through in doing it. The second discipline that really supports homeschooling is the discipline to create order. And I want to be really clear about what I mean by this one, because I do believe, even with myself, that sometimes order is misunderstood. Order is not control, and order is not rigidity. And order is not having your entire day mapped out or running your homeschool by the clock. Hear me when I say that order is simply having enough predictability that you and your kids know what comes next. That's it. Let me say that again. Order is simply having enough predictability that you and your kids know what comes next. Order means you're not spending all day reacting, whether that's to questions, to interruptions, to confusion, because everyone is constantly wondering, like, what are we doing now? Okay, what's next? Without order, your energy then goes into managing what we feel as the homeschool chaos. But with order, your energy goes into teaching and connecting. And one of the things that I love most about order is that when you have some sense of order, it lowers resistance, especially for your kids. Because when they know what to expect, they don't have to brace themselves all day. And when they're asking you over and over again, what's next, it frustrates you. And then the dynamic within your homeschool has really changed. So what does order actually look like in real life? Well, it could look different for everyone, and that's the beauty of that. It might look like starting the day the same way for you. It might look like starting the day at the same time, starting your homeschool at the same time. For many people, it means having a morning basket and saying, okay, these are the things that we have in the morning basket, and we're starting. For many people, it could be that we always start with prayer, or we always start with our devotion. And as you look through the day, it may not be that you have a schedule by the clock, but it could be that you say we always start with math, or we always write in our journal first, or whatever it is. But it looks like you have some sort of predictable flow. It might even look like you always do the same type of work before lunch or after lunch, or you end the day the same way, even if the middle of it looks differently. But notice what I didn't say in that, because there are many choices. And if I didn't say your thing that you do, put that in there. But what I'm not saying is that it's exact times or a perfect schedule or that everything has to be figured out. The anchor here that I want us to really think about when we think about this discipline of order is that we know what comes next. We have intentionally thought through whatever it is, whatever the area is, the structure is, we've thought about that. And if order feels hard for you right now, then my suggestion for you is don't try to organize your whole day. Just choose one anchor that you're going to focus on. And that anchor is one part of the day that stays the same even when everything else changes. I promise you, you will feel so much better if you get into the habit of making sure that thing is the same. Because as you're looking for your wins, whether it's your daily wins or your weekly wins, you get to see that that has stayed the same and you've done it. Now, as you continue to move forward, then you can build on that. But for right now, we're just going to look at how can I, if you're feeling that, because remember, we have choice here. You may say the discipline I want to work on is the start. Like I want to start something new and I'm looking for that. If you're saying the discipline you want to work on is some order, then that's just the one that you're going to work on. And let me say what I'm going to say at the end right now. My suggestion would be to choose one of these disciplines, not all of them at the same time. Choose one, get some mastery around that, and then go in and do another one. And here's the question for you to consider if order is the discipline that you want to work on. What's one part of your day that feels chaotic? And what could anchor it? What is something that you can set up that's predictable, that allows you to know this is how we're doing it, that is really, depending on where you are in your life, can be super simple. As simple as I loved the book when I forgot who it was, but she came out with a morning basket because that was the anchor to many people's day. And it helped to then make the day flow. And then they were able to make so many other changes and adjustments and things to the rest of their day. So that's what you're going to choose. What's one part of your day that feels chaotic and what could anchor it? The third discipline that really supports homeschooling is the discipline to follow through. And this one is a little tender for me because I know that when follow through is missing, it's easy to assume that something is wrong with me and probably with you. And it's one of the areas where I struggle with because I have lots of ideas all the time, nonstop in every area of my life, whether it's homeschooling, whether it's our co-op, whether it's my business, whether it's this podcast, whatever it is, I just always have lots and lots and lots and lots of ideas. And so I had to learn that follow through isn't about doing more, but it's about finishing what I start, even if it's smaller than what was originally planned. The truth is that without follow through, everything ends up feeling open ended. And so our lessons end up lingering, our work drags on, and over time, we can feel extremely discouraged for us as the homeschool mom, but also for our kids. Because when nothing ever finishes, it's hard to feel confident that learning is actually happening for both of us. So follow through truly can change that. Completion actually builds trust, and our kids begin to trust the process, and then you begin to trust yourself again. So what does follow through actually look like in real life? Well, it's about choosing assignments that can be realistically completed within the time that you've allotted for them. It looks like staying with one thing long enough for it to land, and it looks like ending a lesson clearly instead of drifting away from it. One of the beautiful things, we have a math tutor that works with my children. And one of the things I love about the way that she works with math is that we go through from one thing, like it's addition, all the way to the end of addition. So we just keep working through that. And while at first it looks like, oh man, we're not, that is not allowing us to go through all these different things, it allows them to really understand the concept of addition to be able to apply it in all the other things. And one of the things that I've always worked with follow through is teaching them how to read and really making sure that they understand that from beginning to end. And what I love about the follow through with this one thing, think of it as the key lever. When you can find the key lever of something, it then affects all these different things. So following through with ensuring that your child can read really well and comprehend really well means that now that's a key lever in all the other subject areas. And even thinking about just, whether it's addition in math or reading or comprehension or whatever, is recognizing that follow through often requires less, not more. So it can give us shorter lessons, fewer changes midweek, clear endings. And the anchor here is very, very simple. We finish this. Not everything, but just this. That's key because I feel like in some cases I feel like it because it's true. I start several different projects sometimes. I was laughing with my brother the other day and I was telling him about a book I was reading, not remembering that I had just told him about another book that I was reading. And he's like, I know. He didn't say it out loud, but I answered it for him. I was like, yeah, I'm reading more than one. And sometimes that's hard because then I don't ever finish any of them. And listen, that part is probably not going to change. And I'm so thankful that I've met other people that end up reading lots of books at one time. But that actually can feel very stressful when you have all of these open things. And so the anchor is just simple. We finish this thing. I was going to say everything. Not everything, just this. So here's the question that I want you to ask yourself for this one. And it's the one that I keep on asking myself, not just in homeschooling, but in life. What's one thing in your homeschool that keeps getting started, but never quite finish? And how could you make it small enough to complete? Think about those big tasks that we have. How can we really make them shorter so that they've got shorter tasks and so we can finish that task and then move on? So think of it as you've got these big projects, but what are the tasks and how can you make them smaller? And in your homeschool, sometimes we think of all of the lessons in this big curriculum rather than we're just working on lesson 42 today. And even though I say today, lesson 42 could be a 2-day thing because it could be we're going to work on it for 45 minutes today or 30 minutes, whatever you decided. And then that's going to be it. And tomorrow we'll work on it for 45 minutes or so. And even though that might sound like I'm contradicting what I'm saying, the reality is what we want to do is bring it to a place where it's smaller so we can get it done. And as we think about, most of us are using curriculum that has a specific lesson, and that can feel daunting if the lesson is, especially if you're in the higher grades, sometimes those lessons can be an hour. Even though it says like you can spend 30 minutes, it can feel like it's a lot more. And so you have two choices there. You can either decide we're not going to do as many subjects today because the goal for me, which is why it's so important for us to look at what would make me feel like a win. The goal could be, I want to get through this lesson. And so you decide that instead of doing math, science, history, I'm having a blank on the subject, spelling, whatever, writing, all of those things today, you could decide, let's look at what we have to do today. And I recognize that this writing assignment is really big and the project we were doing for history is really big and the math is really big. And we can just say, okay, today we're going to work on these 3 things. And these 3 things are, we're going to get our outline done for the writing. We're going to finish the math assignment for whatever the lesson is. And we're going to write down what we're doing in our project. Or if the project for history is really big, we could just say, we're going to read a little for 20 minutes, give it a time, and then and then in our project today, we want to finish doing whatever, whether it's the whole project or, I always say salt cubes whenever I'm talking about what we do in homeschooling. Not that any of us are using that, but it could be like, I'm going to get my salt cubes for my pyramid done. Whatever it is, we're just breaking it down, making sure that it's something that we say, I'm able to finish this thing. We started it, we're finishing it, we've gotten done with it. The 4th discipline that we want to talk about that supports homeschooling is the discipline to adjust and not abandon. And this discipline matters because when something isn't working, I know, just like me, probably, your instinct is to go to one of 2 extremes. Either we keep on pushing through that thing that clearly isn't serving us anymore, or we throw it all out and we assume that the whole thing is the problem. Adjustment is the discipline that kind of lives right in the middle. It's the ability for us to pause long enough to ask the question, what needs to change before I decide to walk away from this completely? And without this adjustment, what happens is frustration builds quietly or out loud, and we keep on going, but we feel heavier and heavier and heavier and frustrated, and just like we want to throw in the towel with everything. With adjustment, this pressure can really get released before the burnout starts to show up. But adjustment doesn't mean that we're pretending that something that is working when it's not working. It means that we're changing how we're engaging with something before we decide whether we want to abandon it or not. So let's talk about how this shows up in real life. And I know that one of the most common places that this shows up is with curriculum. Dun, dun, dun. Well, when a curriculum isn't working, it's very easy for us to assume that the curriculum itself is the problem. And so we think, I chose this wrong. I need to scrap it. I need to start all over. And now we've got piles and piles of curriculum stacking up, or now we have to go back through that process. And a lot of times that process of choosing curriculum can be hard. But many times the issue isn't the curriculum. And I say many times, not all the time, because sometimes it is. But it's really how we're using it in this season. Because even if a curriculum is really amazing, it doesn't mean that it goes through every single season the exact same way. So adjustment with the curriculum, and I've talked about this in another episode a little time ago, but it could be that we're slowing the pace that we're doing it. We could reduce the amount of work. You don't have to do every problem, every page. It could mean that we're reading together instead of expecting it to be independent work, or flipping it. And instead of having us read it together, that we're giving it as independent work as they become more independent or better readers or able to understand it. It could be that we need something like a discussion or some videos or some hands-on learning that can actually support it or make it a little more interesting. Or it could be that we change the order instead of following it straight through. One of my favorite curriculum we did had a very specific scope and sequence, but we just went in and would take the test. I love that it had these assessments, these quick assessments. They had the diagnostic and the test at the end. And so we would just take the diagnostic, and then if they passed it, and actually, no, they didn't have a diagnostic. I said that wrong. We made the test the diagnostic. So we would go in and take that at the beginning and then decide based on what areas they needed support in. Then those were the only things that we did. And then we took a different, because they had an alternative. We would take that alternative test, and then that was it. And so it became exciting for them in the way that they only had to do the things that they didn't understand. And so it allowed the curriculum to work really well for us. And I got to keep a curriculum that I loved, but because my children didn't necessarily love how much was in there, they got to see, hey, if you know this, then you don't have to do it. And I love that, because sometimes the curriculum isn't wrong. It's just being asked to do more than it was designed to do right now. Please remember that the curriculum is a tool. It's not the be all end all. It can be a guide if you allow it to be a guide. But sometimes you put your GPS onto a place where you're going and that you're kind of not sure of, or some of it, but you don't know all of it. And it's taking you on a place where you're like, and you don't follow it exactly. You say, okay, no, she didn't know about this shortcut. I say she, mine's a she. She doesn't know about this shortcut, or I could go off on this road. And you do that, and then you get back on and you get to the same destination in a different way. And so you can use it in that way. And this discipline doesn't only apply to curriculum. It can show up in things like the co-op, or classes, or outside commitments. And our first question doesn't have to be, should I quit this completely? It could be, is there a way to adjust how I'm engaging with this first? And that adjustment doesn't mean that you were wrong in the initial thing. It means that you're paying attention to what's working, what isn't working, and you're smack dab in the middle of, this is the season I'm in. And so I may need to make some adjustments in this season. So the anchor for this discipline is simple. We change how, not whether, yet. And I put the yet in there because it never should feel like I must stick in this thing forever, but it just gets to be, all right, let me start with how I'm approaching this, how we're doing it, before we decide whether or not we need to keep doing it. And you don't have to decide forever today. And here's the question I want you to consider as you think about that. If you're thinking this is the discipline that you need to work on, what's one small adjustment that you could make before deciding to abandon this completely? What is one small adjustment that you could make before you decide to abandon this completely? The final discipline that really supports homeschooling is the discipline to lead yourself. And I want to be really clear about what I mean by this. Leading yourself means noticing what you need, choosing what matters, and then acting with intention. And sometimes that looks like pausing, sometimes it looks like resting, and sometimes it looks like doing the hard thing even when you don't feel like it. Because in homeschooling, in our homeschooling, we know that no one else is setting the direction for the day. That's our responsibility. We're doing that. And our kids take the cues from how we decide and how we prepare and how we move forward when things feel uncomfortable. Leading ourselves doesn't mean ignoring how we feel, but it means acknowledging how we feel without letting it make every decision for us. Because remember, we feel our feelings, we face our feelings, but we don't have to follow our feelings. We don't have to do what they tell us to do. So, what does that look like in real life? It looks like recognizing when you need a break and then taking it. And it looks like recognizing when avoidance might be easier than preparation and then choosing to prepare anyway. It looks like saying, I don't feel like teaching this today, and then giving yourself what you need to teach it well today. It looks like choosing to plan, to learn, to show up, not perfectly, but intentionally. Leading ourselves is the discipline of deciding again and again how we're going to show up, even when it's easier not to. So the anchor for this discipline is simple. We choose on purpose. We're not choosing from guilt. We're not choosing from pressure, but we're choosing from clarity. And here's the question that we want to think about. What do I need right now? And what is the next intentional choice that I can make? Okay. I know that this might feel like a lot today. We talked about a lot of the different disciplines. So before we go into our one thing today, I want to just pause for a second and pull it all together and just recap. Because our goal here is not, as I said in the beginning, it's not for us to work on all of these disciplines at once. It's really for us to recognize which one matters most for us right now. So let's go over these really quickly. Our first discipline is the discipline to start. And this is the discipline that reminds us that beginning doesn't require readiness. We want to be ready, but it doesn't mean that we can't begin if we don't feel fully ready. And our anchor here is we begin. We're not going to do it perfectly and not with everything figured out, but just with intention. Our second discipline is the discipline to create order. And this one is not about, as we said, control or the clock. Our anchor here is we know what comes next. And we know that if we give ourselves enough structure, we're going to reduce our chaos and we're going to lower our resistance. Our third discipline is the discipline to follow through. And this is about finishing small. Our anchor here is we finish this. It's not everything that we need to finish, but just this. And we get to choose what the this is. Our next discipline is the discipline to adjust and not to abandon. And this helps us from overreacting and not, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Our anchor here is we change how, not whether yet. And yet's the important piece here. We get to make some small changes before we make big decisions. And we get to decide based on what we're doing and not based on what we're feeling. And then finally, the last one is the discipline to lead ourselves. And this discipline helps us to bring it all together because the anchor here is that we get to choose on purpose. We get to not choose from guilt, not from pressure, but from clarity. Now, each of these different disciplines solves a different problem. So we don't need to practice all of them at the same time. And we don't need to go in saying, okay, which one, we're going to do all of these. We actually get to choose the one that's missing right now, the one that we feel that is going to give us the most impact, clarity, or what we're needing right now. Because we can go back and as I said before, you have different seasons for this. So that's okay. So what's your one thing for today? After we look at all of those, don't change everything. You get to just choose one discipline to focus on for this week, this month, the rest of the season, whatever it is. And the simple thing we're going to ask ourselves is, which anchor do I need right now? Do I need to begin something new? Do I need more order? Do I need to follow through? Do I need to adjust instead of abandon? Or do I need to lead myself with more intention so that I am feeling that this is working better for me? And we're just going to choose just one and then let that be enough. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. You don't have to hold all of these 5 disciplines at once. If you notice something that stood out to you, if you name something that mattered for you, that's enough for today. That's all that we're working on. And to support you as you listen through the rest of these January episodes, I've created a simple January reflection resource. Yes, because I love a good reflection. And it's something that you can come back to throughout the month to help you think, to help you pray, and choose intentionally without pressure. And if you'd like that resource, the easiest way to get it right now is just to email me one word. Just send me the word January, and I'll send it straight back to you. My email is in the show notes. It's hello@ingamasick.com, and you're just going to send the word January. But if you're listening and thinking, man, I wish I could talk this through with someone who understands homeschool and real life, then that's one of the reasons why I have created the Breathable Homeschool Circle. And I'm excited about it because it's a live, guided space where homeschool moms, just like us, can walk with me and ask real questions and think through their homeschool and life in a breathable way. The great thing about this is there is no long-term commitment, no complicated structure. And if you'd like to be invited to the first session, you can add your name to the interest list. It's in the show notes, and I'll send the details as soon as it opens. I just want to tell you that I am so glad that you took this time today. I hope that this episode, while it's a little longer, has really given you some encouragement and equipped you to make some decisions for your homeschool without feeling like you have to overhaul everything. And until next time, remember to take a moment to catch your breath.